Three, two, one.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of Grok Talk, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com.
Grok Talk.
Welcome back to Grok Talk, show 100. Yeah, I'm going to keep saying that because it's kind of cool.
It is. Since Steve let's be clear, since Steve resurrected Grok Talk 2 years ago, we've had a pretty much unbroken, if not unblemished, record, and here we are at show 100 of the era of Steve.
Thanks a lot. So anyway, to continue the legacy, if it were, we have our next guest, who's now a recurring guest, which is a great thing. David Bozell from ForAmerica is on the phone. David, good morning.
What's up, guys? Congratulations.
Hey, thank you. Thanks. So I was, we're going to talk about this Fifth Circuit Court thing, but I pulled a couple of little paragraphs from some media, and I just want to read these real quick, and then we'll get into your segment. New York Times, a federal appeals court on Tuesday denied the Obama administration's request to lift a hold on the president's executive actions on immigration, which would have granted protection from deportation, as well as work permits to millions of immigrants in the country illegally. Washington Times. A federal appeals court refused to lift an injunction against President Obama's deportation amnesty in a ruling Tuesday that delivers a second major legal setback to the administration and keeps millions of illegal immigrants on hold. National Review. Once again, President Obama's unlawful amnesty push has suffered a legal blow. AP. President Barack Obama's plan to shield as many as 5 million immigrants living in the U.S. from deportation remained on hold Tuesday. David Bozell, once again, the courts have proven what the rest of us know to be true.
But does he care anyway?
Well, David Bozell certainly does.
No,
Mr. Obama doesn't.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder why the Republicans funded the darn thing in the first place.
It
right?
does, doesn't it?
I mean, they had 26 states sue against this, and then a number of congressmen also signed on to the brief, but at the same time, they authorized the funding for it. So we'll see where it lands, and we'll see where it lands in the appropriations process. I haven't heard from any of the committees that within the jurisdiction of Homeland Security committees that there's been a stay on the appropriations. Mm-hmm. That may very well be the case. But I haven't heard. And if I were running communications operations for the Republican Party, that'd be the first thing I'd be crowing about. We're going to protect the American taxpayer now that the Fifth Circuit has ruled against the president. But they were on the right side of the argument from the very beginning. There was no reason for them to buckle when they did. No political advantageous reason anyway. And so here they are. And like we said in our statement, President Obama just kind of treats the Constitution like a tissue.
Mm-hmm.
Disregards it completely. But the left just keeps coming. This isn't something that'll dissuade them. The left will just keep picking at this any which way they can and tie the system in knots, because that's what they do. And it's going to be up to the Republican Party, the upper echelons of the leadership, to decide who they're for. Are they going to be on for the Constitution and for protecting the resources of the American taxpayer, or are they going to continue to support President Obama's agenda?
There was another piece of media that I grabbed that said that this was actually overturned on what they called fairly arcane legal and procedural grounds. Something about notice and comment, failure to pass the program through the rulemaking process governed by the Administrative Procedures Act. None of this really matters to most people. I think, like you said, most Americans are like, there's a law that Congress needs to be the one making these decisions and, like you said, appropriating money. Shouldn't just be...
The American Procedures Act, the Administrative Procedures Act, that is actually kind of a big deal, because that's where a lot of these challenges are coming through. Mm-hmm. Is the administration not not adhering to that act, the APA for short. And so that's where a lot of this stuff is being argued through. So that's actually it's inside baseball stuff, but that's kind of an important deal. Senator Langford out of Oklahoma is really pushing that as a talking point. So
the way this is written, it sounds like this is a way to get him what he wants without having to go through Congress, though. Maybe I read it wrong. I don't know.
Well, perhaps. Again, this stuff, like a lot of these debates, guys, it's really up to the Republican Party as to whether or not they're going to continue to appropriate resources, or are they going to do the right thing and close the bank window? And that's where we talked about this a couple weeks ago. But it's a simple system of government under which the founders created for us. The president can declare anything that he wants. It's up to Congress to decide whether or not they want to appropriate the resources for it.
Right,
and they may not like it. It may be, it may cause political pain for either side. But that's the way the system is set up. And if you're going to run on these things, like the Republicans did. Over 10,000 advertisements in the month of October 2014 alone, promising that they would stop the amnesty program. They have a moral obligation at this point to do everything possible. They funded it. They've broken their promise. They let Governor Abbott basically do the heavy lifting for them. And so they've got something in the win column, but it's going to be up to Mitch McConnell and John Boehner to spike the football.
Also, we know if we leave it up to Mitch McConnell and John Boehner, they'll turn the win into a loss. It's just what they do. And the pictures of Boehner whispering Obama's ear and McConnell cozying up to him and Boehner kissing Pelosi. I mean, the pictures out there say everything you need to know. There is no difference. They're all in the same club, and it's not ours.
Well, but you see, look at what Rand Paul's doing with the NSA stuff. Now we can argue about whether or not he's right, but here's a guy who has his convictions, and he's taking the argument as far as he can possibly take it. I think eventually he probably has to compromise tomorrow night when the deadline arrives. But he's taking it as far as he can go, which is what you should do in negotiations. And if you have to compromise, you compromise without compromising your principles. And you go on offense as far as you possibly can go.
Yeah, and we can argue.
But look at Obama. Look at Obama's basically on bended knee to Rand Paul. Please, can I have my NSA, my master surveillance?
The whole thing is so ironic, and most people don't notice just how ironic it is. And I think Ted Cruz is another one of principle, and he's actually in New Hampshire yesterday, today, and leaving tomorrow morning to go down to D.C. for this vote. And I know he's getting an earful over this, and he's been pretty strong on the Patriot Act too, and on budgetary matters. And these guys get vilified. We can argue whether some of the other stuff Rand Paul says, which gets a bit too close to blame America like his dad, is good for his ambitions, but he's absolutely a staunch advocate of smaller and constitutional government, and I can't fault him for that.
I can't fault him for that either, and for where he gets himself into trouble, he did an ad the other day, picking on Ted Cruz. Why? Ted Cruz is not your enemy. It's like, why do that? And this is the Rand Paul camp is the first camp to complain when somebody criticizes their guy. And here they are, with a shot across the bow against Ted Cruz of all people. So that he's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, as far as I'm concerned. When it comes, he loses his argument, loses credibility when he does stuff like that.
Yeah.
But that being said, just political negotiations, he's doing everything possible to stand up for what he believes in. You only wish that his senior senator in Kentucky would do the same darn thing just once. But McConnell just refuses to do that sort of stuff. Does not know how to negotiate at all. So that's kind of the frustrating deal. But good for Senator Cruz for being up there and coming back to the vote. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens. Whether or not Rand Paul lets the Freedom Act be the compromise, which I think it should be.
When I hear Rand Paul and Ron Paul speaking out against U.S. intervention, what I hear is they're not criticizing America, they're criticizing the government. They're looking, and it used to be back in the days that the conservative foreign policy was a policy of non-intervention. Let the people in other countries kill each other off, let them have their own problems. We have America, our government is supposed to work for us. It's supposed to deal with our problems back home.
And I'm inclined to go that way, but sometimes I think the way it comes out doesn't do them any favors.
And I think Ronald Reagan probably articulated it better than anyone, because the news media was always trying to do the same thing with Ronald Reagan that they're doing now with Rand Paul, which is twist his words around. And Ronald Reagan's his style of speaking was very, very simple and straightforward, and it was very difficult to twist his words around it. He was unquestionably pro-America, very much a supporter of the military and our veterans, and I think that resonated with people.
Right, and I think the Freedom Act gets Rand Paul a step closer to what he wants, and that's why that'll be the compromise, just close to the deadline tomorrow night. But he takes a page out of the left's playbook. Go as far as you can take it, and compromise only when necessary, and then wake up and fight it again the next day. Once you've moved the ball a few yards, and this is something that we've just been begging the Republican leadership, a strategy for the Republican leadership to adopt, but they are afraid of their own shadows, and the end result is. What happens? The polls, Obama goes up in the polls because of the Republicans' fecklessness. Because he's doing something. We may not agree, but he's doing something.
We talked about that last week, 2 weeks ago when we had you on. Here's a question for you. Now,
and Rand's going to benefit too for the same reason. It could be, we may not agree, but he's going to benefit. He's a smart guy. He's going to benefit in his polls because he's trying to do something.
Correct.
Yeah, and that's important. We understand we have to have some spying on enemies overseas, but just about everybody thinks the Patriot Act went way too far and allows too much warrantless intervention domestically, which is totally unconstitutional. And that's where the national security hawks misread the public, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
So, David, obviously 26 states are filing this suit, which for those of you who took Common Core is more than half, and the states will probably not back down.
Jeb Bush would be very proud of you.
So Obama could take this all the way to the Supreme Court, but he's had horrible luck there. Is it going there, do you think?
If it goes there, it's going to go there at a glacier pace, and it may not reach there by the time he's out of office. So, I mean, they're not going to take it up before this June session, obviously, and so that would put it to the fall session. And they usually keep the big cases for the next June session, and so that would be 2016. And at that point, you're in the throes of a presidential cycle, and I think Justice Roberts, Chief Justice Roberts, is doing everything possible to punt this stuff back to Congress. Because he understands the system of government under which we live in. Figure this stuff out. Stop asking us to bail you out. Again, I'm going to beat a dead horse here, but the president can declare whatever he wants, but it's up to Congress to decide whether or not they're going to appropriate the money. And so is it constitutional, unconstitutional? At some level, guys, it doesn't really matter. If it's going to enjoy bipartisan funding and bipartisan support, Chief Justice Roberts kind of looks at it and says, "Well, I guess I got to try to bail you out." And he obviously is uncomfortable in that spot. I think anybody would be. So he's asking the legislative body to stand up for itself and be an co-equal branch of government, instead of just the rubber stamp that they've been the last 6 months.
Yeah, they're afraid to nick anything out of the hide of any agency, even if it means standing up against Obama's excesses.
Right. Well, look at speaking of the Supreme Court, look at the King versus Burwell case coming up. Now, it's It's going to be probably announced late June. So you got about a month to go. How long have the Republicans had to figure out a replacement plan to Obamacare? 5 years? 6 years?
Yeah.
7 years?
5.
Now,
least.
let's say that the subsidies are taken away. You get 7 million plus who have lost their insurance, really through no fault of their own. They may have voted for Obama, but that's semi-incidental here. Through no fault of their own, their insurance is going to get taken away. So what do you do? The Republicans have no idea, no plan. They talk a good game. They say they're really working hard on it. Well, get it together. You're going to get vilified by the left and by the president who has the bully pulpit. Get it together. Come together around a plan. Sell it early and often to the American people and make your case. It's not that hard. Stop being so afraid of putting something on paper and putting a proposal for the American people to study and digest.
Well, they could have done it the way the Democrats did with Obamacare. I mean, people didn't want it, and yet they pushed so hard. Obviously, there were a lot of other things going on, but I mean, that model of promotion is really what they need.
Yeah, they could have. I mean, it would be a little, well, not a little. I'm not a huge fan of that because the left was dishonest and just ramming it through without.
I meant just they were in the press every day. There was always somebody out front talking about it and pushing it and making it sound great, even if it sucked. They had, and that's what they need to do.
Yes, they do. And they cannot seem to get their acts together. I've had meeting after meeting with these guys. Yes, there are lots of plans floating around. Well, that's not worth the paper they're printed on. This is what leadership is all about. Okay, this is what a Speaker of the House is supposed to do. This is what a majority leader is supposed to do. Supposed to get everybody in a room and say, guys, we're not leaving until we walk out of here with a comprehensive replacement to Obamacare today. Okay, and this is going to be our Republican platform today. And they've had. This is why they get crucified by independents and kind of purple Democrats across the country because they don't feel as if the Republican Party has any ideas. I know there are plenty of solutions floating out there. Let's pick one and go with it.
They've even said that they have solutions and temporary replacement subsidies while something like HSAs kick in, but we never see the legislation proposed.
Exactly. This is what got Cantor into huge trouble. He came out of a Republican retreat. This is 2 years ago now, and he says that the House's top domestic priority is going to be a replacement to Obamacare. So astute reporters put a microphone in his face and said, "Okay, when are you going to vote on that?" And he said, "Well, maybe in a couple of months, maybe." Well, do you have the outline of a plan? No, we don't. Well, are you going to attach it to must-pass legislation? No, we won't. Well, then, what's the point of it all?
We have no plan.
It never happened.
Yeah, we have no plan, no timetable, and no leverage, and we're telling you.
But it's our top priority.
Yeah, and we're telling you about it. Yep.
Actually, your top priority is to look like a fool. That's your top priority.
And I think he suffered the consequences politically.
He did indeed.
There was complete mismanagement of the floor. So hopefully Kevin McCarthy can do a little bit better.
We can hope so. All right, well, we're just about out of time here. I want to thank you again for joining us. Maybe we'll see or hear from you again in a couple weeks. Who knows?
Absolutely. No problem, guys.
All right,
It's been a great pleasure. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Okay, so David Bozell, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
Raw Talk.